Malcolm, just
Are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes. Number one, of the black man in America is beyond America's ability to solve. It's a human problem, not an American problem or a Negro problem. And as a human problem or a world problem, we feel that it should be taken out of the jurisdiction of the United States government and the United States courts.
We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist congressman and senators and a president from Texas in Washington, D.C. to make up their mind that our people are due now some degree of civil rights. No, we want it now, or we don't think anybody should have it.
Uhuru, welcome to We Charge Colonialism, Black August edition. I am Ikemba Ojore, a community organizer and host of We Charge Colonialism Media. Black August is honored every year to commemorate the fallen freedom fighters of the Black Liberation Movement, to call for the release of political prisoners in the United States, to condemn the oppressive conditions of U.S. prisons, and to emphasize the continued importance of the Black liberation struggle. Observers of Black August commit to higher levels of discipline throughout the month. This can include fasting from food and drink, frequent physical exercise and political study, and engagement in political struggle. In short, the principles of Black August are study, fast, train, and fight. During the COVID shutdown, myself with other organizers launched the first Black August Power Hour study by examining George Jackson's Blood in My Eye. We are reviving the Black August Power Hour study with Brother Malcolm X, and we have reached out to organizers within the Black Liberation Movement to participate. We will be meeting every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time to analyze and discuss the philosophy of Malcolm X. Do join us on YouTube or Facebook for this special commemoration of Black August and Black resistance. Our goal is for organizers within the Black Liberation Movement to unpack Brother Malcolm X's views on colonial capitalism in a contemporary context, to unpack resistance in the movement against colonialism from the lens of Minister Malcolm X. We will be reading select texts and discussing related questions to uplift the historical events that has taken place throughout the month of August. Now, welcome to the Black August Power Hour. All right, peace, family, peace, family. Welcome, welcome. This is our final week with it down to the final stretch of our Black August Power Hour series. As we continue to examine Malcolm X and his speeches this week, we will be looking at Message to the Grassroots, which is probably one of the top three favorite speeches of mine when it comes to Malcolm X. So again, we're here with our organizers, and I want to appreciate them for even being here and joining and having this discussion, because I know how busy organizing work can be. And I want to appreciate all of you too who have been here throughout the month to build with us as we do this series. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pass it to Tone, who's going to facilitate the reading and discussion. Let me get it over to our organizer. I think that they can hear you now.
Okay, peace, everyone. Thank you for attending the first of the two Black August sessions this week. As Ikemba said, we are winding down and coming to an end in Black August. I hope everyone was able to study, pray, fast, train, and we're happy that you're here with us. As mentioned, we'll be unpacking Message to the Grassroots, so we have some really great questions for you. But I'm going to pass it over to our another organizer, and Darren, who is going to lead us in the reading. So Darren, whenever you're ready, please unmute yourself and start.
All right. Peace, everyone. Salutations. Let's get started. A Message to the Grassroots, November 10th, 1963. during the few moments that we have, we want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand. We all agreed tonight, all of the speakers have agreed, that America has a very serious problem. Not only does America have a very serious problem, but our people have a very serious problem. America's problem is us. We're her problem. The only reason she has a problem is she doesn't want us here. And every time you look at yourself, be you black, brown, red, or yellow, a so-called Negro, you represent a person who poses such a serious problem for America because you're not wanted. Once you face this as a fact, then you can start plotting a course that will make you appear intelligent instead of unintelligent. What you and I need to do is learn to forget our differences. When we come together, we don't come together as Baptists or Methodists. You don't catch hell because you're a Baptist, and you don't catch hell because you're a Methodist. You don't catch hell because you're a Methodist or Baptist. You don't catch hell because you're a Democrat or a Republican. You don't catch hell because you're a Mason or an Elk. And you sure don't catch hell because you're an American. Because if you was an American, you wouldn't catch no hell. You catch hell because you're a black man. You catch hell, all of us catch hell for the same reason. So we are all black people, so-called Negroes, second-class citizens, ex-slaves. You are nothing but an ex-slave. You don't like to be told that. But what else are you? You are ex-slaves. You didn't come here on the Mayflower. You came here on a slave ship, in chains, like a horse or a cow or a chicken. And you were brought here by the people who came here on the Mayflower. You were brought here by the so-called pilgrims or founding fathers. They were the ones who brought you here. We have a common enemy. We have this in common. We have a common oppressor, and a common discriminator. But once we all realize that we have this common enemy, then we unite on the basis of what we have in common. And what we have foremost in common is that enemy, the white man. He's an enemy to all of us. I know some of you all think that some of them aren't enemies. Time will tell. In Bangda, back in, I think, 1954, was the first unity meeting in centuries of black people. And once you study what happened at the Bangdang Conference and the results of the Bangdang Conference, it actually served as a model for the same procedure you and I can use to get our problems solved. At Bangdang, all the nations came together. There were dark nations from Africa and Asia. Some of them were Buddhists. Some of them were Muslim. Some of them were Christians. Some of them were Confucianists. Some were atheists. Despite their religious differences, they came together. Some were communists. Some were socialists. Some were capitalists. Despite their economic and political differences, they came together. All of them were black, brown, red, or yellow. The number one thing that was not allowed to attend the Bangdang Conference was the white man. He couldn't come. Once they excluded the white man, they found that they could get together. Once they kept him out, everybody else fell right in and fell in line. This is the thing that you and I have to understand. And these people who came together didn't have nuclear weapons. They didn't have jet planes. They didn't have all the heavy armaments that the white man has, but they had unity. They were able to submerge their little petty differences and agree on one thing, that though one African came from Kenya and was being colonized by the Englishman, and another African came from the Congo and was being colonized by the Belgian, and another African came from Guinea and was being colonized by the French, and another came from Angola and was being colonized by the Portuguese. When they came to the Bangdang Conference, they looked at the Portuguese and at the Frenchman and at the Englishman and at the Dutchman and learned or realized that the the one thing that all of them had in common, they were all from Europe. They were all Europeans, blonde, blue-eyed, and white-skinned. They began to recognize who their enemy was. The same man that was colonizing our people in Kenya was colonizing our people in the Congo. The same one in the Congo was colonizing our people in South Africa, and in southern Rhodesia, and in Burma, and in India, and in Afghanistan, and in Pakistan. They realized all over the world where the dark man was being oppressed, he was being oppressed by the white man. Where the dark man was being exploited, he was being exploited by the white man. So they got together under this basis that they had a common enemy. And when you and I here in Detroit and in Michigan and in America who have been awakened today look around us, we too realize here in America, we all have a common enemy. Whether he's in Georgia or Michigan, whether he's in California or New York, he's the same man. Blue eyes and blonde hair and pale skin. Same man. So what we have to do is what they did. They agreed to stop quarreling among themselves. Any little spat that they had, they settle it among themselves. Go into a huddle. Don't let the enemy know that you got a disagreement. Instead of us airing our differences in public, we have to realize we're all the same family. And when you have a family squabble, you don't get out on the sidewalk. If you do, everybody calls you uncouth, unrefined, uncivilized, savage. If you don't make it at home, you settle it at home. You get it in the closet, argue it out behind closed doors. And then when you come out on the street, you pose a common front, a united front. And this is what we need to do in the community and in the city and in the state. We need to stop airing our differences in front of the white man. Put the white man out of our meetings, number one, and then sit down and talk shop with each other. That's all you got to do. I would like to make a few comments concerning the difference between the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution. There's a difference. Are they both the same? And if they're not, what is the difference? What is the difference between a Black revolution and a Negro revolution? First, what is a revolution? Sometimes I'm inclined to believe that many of our people are using this word revolution loosely, without taking careful consideration of what this word actually means and what its historic characteristics are. When you study the historic nature of revolutions, the motive of a revolution, the objective of a revolution, and the result of a revolution, and the methods used in a revolution, you may change your words. You may change words. You may devise another program. You may change your goal and you may change your mind. Look at the American Revolution in 1776. That revolution was for what? For land. Why did they want land? Independence. How was it carried out? Bloodshed. Number one, it was based on land, the basis of independence. And the only way they could get it was bloodshed. The French Revolution. What was it based on? The landless against the landlord. What was it for? Land. How did they get it? Bloodshed. Was no love lost. Was no compromise. Was no negotiation. I'm telling you, you don't know what a revolution is. Because when you find out what it is, you'll get back in the alley. You'll get out of the way. The Russian Revolution. What was it based on? Land. The landless against the landlord. How did they bring it about? Bloodshed. You haven't got a revolution that doesn't involve bloodshed. And you're afraid to bleed. I said you're afraid to bleed. As long as the white man sent you to Korea, you bled. He sent you to Germany, you bled. He sent you to the South Pacific to fight the Japanese, you bled. You bleed for white people. But when it comes to time to seeing your own churches being bombed and little black girls be murdered, you haven't got no blood. You bleed when the white man says bleed. You bite when the white man says bite. And you bark when the white man says bark. I hate to say this about us, but it's true. How are you going to be nonviolent in Mississippi as violent as you were in Korea? How can you justify being nonviolent in Mississippi and Alabama when your churches are being bombed and your little girls are being murdered, and at the same time you're going to get violent with Hitler and Tojo and somebody else that you don't even know? If violence is wrong in America, violence is wrong abroad. If it's wrong to be violent defending black women and black children and black babies and black men, then it's wrong for America to draft us and make us violent abroad in defense of her. And if it is right for America to draft us and teach us how to be violent in defense of her, then it's right for you and me to do whatever is necessary to defend our own people right here in this country. The Chinese Revolution, they wanted land. They threw the British out along with the Uncle Tom Chinese. Yeah, they did. They set a good example. When I was in prison, I read an article. Don't be shocked when I say I was in prison. You're still in prison. That's what America means, prison. When I was in prison, I read an article in Life magazine showing a little Chinese girl, 9 years old. Her father was on his hands and knees, and she was pulling the trigger because he was an Uncle Tom Chinaman. When they had the revolution over there, they took a whole generation of Uncle Tom, just wiped them out. And within 10 years, that little girl became a full-grown woman. No more Toms in China. And today, it's one of the toughest, roughest, most feared countries on this earth by the white man. Because there are no Uncle Toms over there. Of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And when you see that you've got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who have problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you know how you can get yours straight. There's been a revolution, a black revolution going on in Africa. In Kenya, the Mau Mau were revolutionaries. They were the ones who made the word Uhuru. They were the ones who brought it to the fore. The Mau Mau, they were revolutionaries. They believed in scorched earth. They knocked everything aside that got in their way. And their revolution also was based on land, a desire for land. In Algeria, the northern part of Africa, a revolution took place. The Algerians were revolutionists. They wanted land. France offered to let them be integrated into France. They told France to hell with France. They wanted some land, not some France. And they engaged in a bloody battle. So I cite these various revolutions, brothers and sisters, to show you, you don't have a peaceful revolution. You don't have a turn the other cheek revolution. There's no such thing as a nonviolent revolution. The only kind of revolution that's nonviolent is the Negro revolution. The only revolution based on love of your enemy is the Negro revolution. The only revolution in which the goal is a desegregated lunch counter, a desegregated theater, a desegregated park, and a desegregated public toilet. You can sit down next to white folks on the toilet. That's no revolution. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. The white man knows what a revolution is. He knows that the black revolution is worldwide in scope and in nature. The black revolution is sweeping Asia, sweeping Africa, is rearing its head in Latin America. The Cuban Revolution, that's a revolution. They overturned the system. Revolution is in Asia. Revolution is in Africa. And the white man is screaming because he sees revolution in Latin America. How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is? You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. And you sitting around here like a knot on the wall saying, I'm going to love these folks no matter how much they hate me. No, you need a revolution. Who ever heard of a revolution where they lock arms, as Reverend Cleage was pointed out beautifully, singing, "We shall overcome"? Just tell me. You don't do that in a revolution. You don't do any singing. You're too busy swinging. It's based on land. And a revolutionary wants land so he can set up his own nation, an independent nation. These Negroes aren't asking for no nation. They're trying to crawl back on the plantation. When you want a nation, that's called nationalism. When the white man became involved in the revolution in this country against England, what was it for? He wanted this land so he could set up another white nation. That's white nationalism. The American Revolution was white nationalism. The French Revolution was white nationalism. The Russian Revolution too, yes, it was white nationalism. You don't think so? Why do you think Khrushchev and Mao can't get their heads together? White nationalism. All the revolutions that are going on in Asia and Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. A revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. I was reading some beautiful words by Reverend Cleage, pointing out why he couldn't get together with someone else here in the city, because all of them were afraid of being identified with the black nationalism. If you're afraid of black nationalism, you're afraid of revolution. And if you love revolution, you love black nationalism. To understand this, you have to go back to what the young brother here referred to as the house Negro
we can
in
stop,
the field.
We can stop right there. That was a good segue into the discussion questions, I think. Appreciate you reading that. You made me feel like I was in Detroit just now. You did an awesome job reading that with passion and everything. Felt like I was listening to Malcolm. Brother Darren, thank you. And appreciate everybody too for joining us. Make sure that you like and share if you're just joining us, and if this is your first time being on We Charge Colonialism, subscribe to the channel. We just got finished reading Malcolm X's Message to the Grassroots. This speech was given on November 10th, 60 years ago. And there's also, with that being said, this year in Boston, November 10th, there's going to be a Malcolm X symposium that's going to be covering this speech. So look out for more information on that. I'll pass it to you, Sister Tone, so we can get into these discussion questions.
Yes, right on. So, Aaron, getting carried away. I was getting carried away there. You did an excellent job. Thank you for that reading. And so we will now engage some of the questions that we have for this reading. And the first question opens up with, Malcolm says that America has a very serious problem, that they don't want us here, us being Black folks, that we're not American. Can anyone deepen Malcolm's statement and explain its relevance, if any, in today's context? So what did Malcolm mean? Can we deepen that and then explain if there's any relevance in today's context? And we'll take this back. If you'd like to speak, please put yourself on that.
Yeah, and I thought that was a powerful statement. Is anyone on stack?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that I think that was a powerful statement because it speaks to the status of Africans in America. Malcolm has said on other occasions that second-class citizenship, you don't have that anywhere in the world. You're either a slave or free. What is a second-class citizen? And the second-class this status of second-class citizenship, is used to obscure our true status and position within the empire. Black people have to recognize ourselves, the reality of our situation, which is we're colonized people here. We're under foreign domination, political and economic domination. I don't think that has changed. The language may have changed in regards to the way that we're described. Sometimes they use words like minority to describe us. There's always these different terms to separate us, people of color. But there's this separation, this distinction that's made. I think we have to, as a people, have to be more conscious of this separation and understand that we do represent a nation within this American nation. So we can get to the business of what Malcolm was talking about in regards to land, because what is a nation without land? So I don't know if anybody else wanted to add on, but that's just some initial thoughts.
Absolutely. I think also I'd like to add that when we hear this, one makes us think about what does it mean to be a citizen, right? Like we all know um, many people who are identified as Black folks in this country who are against their will. And we see or hear the term citizen, but it's like a shell of the actual meaning. And so it makes people question, like, what does that mean? And we should also think about it in the context of who are we unifying with? But I will stop there, and I will. I see Khalid is on stack. Brother Khalid, please share your thoughts.
Peace to everyone. I'm glad I could be here this morning. I think that for one, I think Malcolm points out that oftentimes, then and now, we fail to really look at the historical narrative concerning not just how we arrived in America or what was to become America, but what our status had been upon our arrival and what our status continued to be for many decades from that moment. And that status had been of property. We were basically property. We were both capital as well as labor when we talk about capitalism. And that was our status. And even when the Civil War was completed, or even just before the Civil War came to an end, the declaration that we were now citizens still didn't play itself out, because unlike white citizens, we had to continue to fight even to this very day for the basic citizenship rights and privileges and powers that the majority of white people never even give a second thought to. And so we talk about citizenship, and I'm glad you raised that issue, Tone, because that's very important. We talk about citizenship. What is citizenship, and what does it really mean? And if you're not enjoying the same rights and privileges as your other so-called citizens, and clearly it's based on your skin color, then clearly you're not a full citizen. And if you have to continue to fight from one generation to the next generation for the same rights and privileges that they take for granted, then clearly you're not a full citizen. You're something else. You may no longer be viewed upon legally as property, but you're certainly not a citizen in the full sense of the word either.
Thank you for that, Brother Khalid. And so we'll move on to our next question, which is about Malcolm spoke about unity, colonized people submerging or putting aside their differences. What has been the obstacle from keeping more Pan-African, Black nationalist, revolutionary organizations from coming together to dismantle the empire and liberate ourselves? So again, the question is, what has been the obstacles that has kept more Pan-African, Black nationalist, revolutionary organizations from coming together to dismantle the empire and liberate ourselves? Let's see Darren on stack. We'll continue to stack after. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, I kind of want to take a jab at the first question, but I think it probably could relate to the second as well. So in regards to this, Malcolm's statement about, they don't want us here, that we are not American. It was something I heard recently about how, this is 1963, he gives a speech. This is also the same year that the March on Washington, happened. And for, Black folks, African folks here, they're, those that participated in the March on Washington, their way to independence or freedom and justice and equality was through assimilation or what they call integration. And Malcolm is basically saying, that's, look at the history. That's not going to work, And no matter what you were, Christian, whether you Methodist, whether you, whatever your political party you registered for, we catch hell because we Black, and so and even today, people still think 60 years later, we still catch a hell and for the masses of Black people, not for an individual, because they always prop up some individual. Oh, they made it, they were successful. They prop up Obama, But what happened during the Black Lives Matter came out of the Obama, when Obama's in office. The material conditions didn't change for the masses of Black people. So police was gunning us down in the streets, so yeah, I just wanted to like share a little bit, of that Malcolm was like, yo, we gotta realize, we gotta like put these differences aside, have these closed door discussions, and then start thinking of a way, for freedom and liberation. And so that's all to share a little bit about that. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Darren. And I just want to read something Valerie put in the chat, which is this discussion is so important and so relevant today, because it speaks directly to the fact that revolution is based on land. And also, Valerie writes, unity is the key. Thanks for that, Valerie. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, writing that it is important that we identify ourselves as a new African nation within a nation. And we see Brother Khalid is on staff. Please share your thoughts, Brother Khalid.
Yeah, so I would say that what has been problematic for us over the last several decades in terms of achieving unity has been, number one, the emergence of a Black neo-colonial class that basically reaped the majority benefits initially from the limited success of the civil rights movement and initiatives. These were the people who were already positioned to take advantage of affirmative action type of programs when those programs became available. These were elements within the Black community who already had some level of some type of education, or who already were positioned to take advantage of being able to send their children or go themselves to get some additional type of education. These were the elements within the Black community, the national Black community, who were already positioned or who were being recruited and groomed to be the Black and brown faces within corporate America, or new Black and brown faces within the corporate media, so forth and so on. So it was a blessing and a curse as we started to make some advances, so-called advances within the civil rights movement. It also strengthened the chokehold of the forces of colonial capitalism. And it also strengthened the grip that certain political entities, i.e. the Democratic Party, and certain economic entities, for example, Nixon and his proclamation and his support for Black capitalism in 1968, 69, it strengthened the grip of those forces around the political and the economic throats of Black America. And so now we have a dominant Black neo-colonial class. And it's dominant not just in terms of electoral politics and representation, but it's dominant, definitely dominant and pervasive throughout Black culture. And it sends a certain type of messaging about what it means to really be Black. And oftentimes it recognizes the suffering, recognizes the struggles from the past, but it always pushes forth this narrative of hope that everything is going to be okay. We just have to keep fighting harder to learn how to become better American citizens. And so that's a part of it. The other part of it is money, that the struggle now is dominated by our forces who get a lot of their financing and funding from our enemies. And people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it, but it is the truth. And that is one of the reasons that our communities are so disoriented and so much in disarray and so confused, because our enemies fund people and they provide people with platforms that they say things that sound militant, they say things that sound revolutionary, but in essence, their job is to quell the revolution, and their job is to make sure that revolutionary thinking and revolutionary types of ideas don't take hold within the community. And last but not least is ego. Some of us, we come into our own, we read a couple of books, we talk a little bit, and our ego becomes so expansive that unity sounds like a cuss word to us. And so we got to learn how to quell our ego. I always reflect on what happened within the Black Panther Party, the so-called split. People characterize it as an East Coast, West Coast split, but it was more of a strategic ideological split, or even more tactical split. And it was fueled by ego, the ego of Huey Newton, the ego of Eldridge Cleaver, the ego of other folks who align either with Huey or Eldridge. And I have to admit, I'm guilty. I was one of those people. And so we have to learn how to curb those egos. And we have to learn how to rein ourselves in, pull ourselves back. So I'll stop there.
Thank you for that, for those who have shared. I want to also just kind of raise something Darren was describing about President Obama, who we see what happened through the culmination of his presidency, and raising that during that time, the movement, which Trayvon Martin, I just want to raise their names, and Mike Brown. I think also important to note is that from a lot of our organizations these days were developed from this kind of reactionary response to this trauma or this abuse to our like communities, and no one is holding anyone to an account as to what are the solutions, like what solution are you bringing forth, or what in all this time what have you done, right, to advance our communities, which communities were made whole, etc. Also important to note with what Brother Khalid just kind of shared around the notion of unity, which is the question, and I'll repeat it in a second, is that I think that in addition to putting aside our intersections as well as our ego and whatever ideological, we should also put aside any ideological differences as a form of dissension, right? Like it's fine for you to join organization based on that belief, but not to kind of disassociate from people on that belief as well. When we think about unity, it shouldn't just be comfortable unity, right? It should be unity strategically and thoughtfully, right? And holding people to an account with integrity, etc. So I just want to raise the question again, and if anyone else wants to answer the question, please feel free. We talked about Malcolm, spoke about unity, recolonized people, submerging or putting aside differences. And we're asking what has been the obstacles from keeping more Pan-African, Black nationalist, revolutionary organizations from coming together to dismantle the empire and liberate ourselves. So does anyone want to offer? I see Valerie in the chat said we do have many different ideological, political, theoretical differences, I believe. However, we must put those aside and fight against our common enemy. Absolutely. If there are no more comments.
Yeah, I think Brother Khalid hit the nail, the hammer on the nail with all of the points. I mean, he spoke of neo-colonialism, enemies funding our organizations, ego. You would have to think deeply to add to the list that he gave. I want to appreciate him for that. I think if we, this is great discussion, great points. This is something to just like go back and listen to. Because those points that were made, if we can sort of, take that and be able to circumvent these obstacles to keep us from unifying, we can get ahead.
Right on. Thank you for that. So our next question is when Brother Malcolm says revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. How do we intend on acquiring land? So what are the plans to actually acquire land? Or do folks have pushback on that being the basis of freedom, justice, and equality, or that revolution is based on?
I don't think we came up with the strategy to acquire it yet.
I'll jump in.
Oh yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to read something because I think that might be better for me, and it's just it's from something that I've written, and it's called Black Self-Determination and the Question of Land. Black self-determination as part of the revolutionary process must involve the question of land. There can be no successful exercise of self-determination and completion of the revolutionary process without discussions and resolutions regarding land, its role as habitat, productive asset, and issues concerning territorial sovereignty. Any ideas, theories, or groups advocating or claiming to organize on behalf of Black liberation or self-determination that fail to advance a tangible land base for the future development of the national Black community should never be taken seriously. Their theories, ideas, and organizing no matter how articulate, grandiose, and appealing, are literally and figuratively without any firmly grounded and rooted material basis. Real and successful revolutionary processes are based upon and characterized by struggles involving land, not just theoretical manipulations and cyberspace propaganda. People fight and shed blood so as to gain or regain control of the land beneath them, the connected and adjacent waterways, and the air above them, and everything else that comes along with it. I'm gonna stop there. We get the land in the long term by fighting for it. And in the process of negotiation, as things cool off, then we negotiate what the boundaries are going to be for the land that we claim to occupy, and the land that we hope to develop, and the land that we claim or we wish to claim as our own. In between all that, individually and organizationally, people can purchase individual parcels of land, either for themselves, their families, or if they belong to groups or organizations, they can purchase or claim individual parcels of land to develop as a resource for the community, for their organizations, and for the people's movement in general. You can purchase it, you can claim it, you can do homesteading, you can do a combination of any of those. But that's how we would go about the business of acquiring land in the short term and in the long term. And the long term means you have to fight for it. And as you sit down or squat to negotiate, whether it's in person or online, about the terms of surrender or the terms of reconfiguration of power and assets and resources and territory, ultimately, that's what it's about. That's part of the revolutionary process.
Thank you for that, Brother Khalid. And can you share where the reading is from?
The reading is from Toward the New African Revolution, Volume 2. This is a series of essays that I've written, the Volume 2, and this is Chapter 12, called Black Self-Determination and the Question of Land.
And if
It's
there's
Easy
a
read.
and if there's a link to that, could y'all share it so I could put it in the chat? And
Yeah, I'll try to come up with something. I'll get it to you.
okay.
Thank you, Brother
All right.
Khalid. And I think it's important to also think about the landscape, right? Like in 2023, we're in a situation where revolutionaries don't even run institutions, not to mention land. So I'm not surprised. And then, not to say that there aren't any, but for the most part, and most Black folks who are kind of operating institutions or own land are people who have more of a capitalist kind of view. And also, look what's happening on Black land, right, in Kemet and on the continent, where you see neo-colonial puppets who are literally being the intermediary between the resources, including people on the land, and the Western world or the white colonial masters. So I'm not shocked that this question possibly throws folks for a loop. But one of the things we hope to raise is that we need to kind of think about this deeply and have a plan to go forward. Welcome.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brother Khalid.
Yeah. Again, in the short term, years ago in the Black Panther Party, there was the idea of survival pending revolution. So in the short term, I would encourage Black folks to, number one, if your family has any land, try to hold on to it. If your family has a home, if your grandmother, your grandfather left you a house, try to hold on to the house. If that house has an adjacent piece of land, it could be a garden, it could be a front yard, it could be a backyard. Try to hold on to it. If you have family ties and family roots that are traceable to perhaps some assets of land that you may be able to lay claim to in the South, because most of our people, we come from the South. Do the research. If you need some help, reach out, get some help from somebody. Maybe you have some land claims in the South, right, that you may not be aware of. Maybe you have some land claims in the West that you may not be aware of. I think many of us are quite aware, not too long ago, there was a family that had a land claim involving some beachfront property that had been utilized by the public for generations, but it actually belonged to this Black family. And that family got their land back, right? So these are just some short-term things that we could do. As we say, free the land. We have to learn how to free the land in the literal sense, but we also have to learn how to go about the business of freeing the land that is within our almost like immediate control or access. That would be our family properties. That would be any traditional properties that our family may have lost control of, but still legally belong to our family. Do the work, do the research, get the help. Also, if you live in the city or even in certain counties, reach out to people to learn about community land trusts, ways that the community could take control over lands within their own area, abandoned homes, abandoned properties, even commercial, agricultural properties that we can take control of, that we can use and we can put into some type of community land trust, and we can grow food, we can provide housing for homeless people, we can do a whole bunch of other stuff with that. So when we talk about free the land, and I've written about this before, that's a great slogan, but free the land has to be more than just the end game, right? Free the land has to be a continuous process. How do we free the land from all types of environmental poisoning and pollution? How can we free the land from these greedy, avaricious land developers? Free the land means more than just the end game. Free the land is a continuous process that we as Black revolutionaries must engage in. And not just here within the United States, but if we can, anywhere throughout the African diaspora.
Yeah, to add to that real quick, just to add on, I'm thinking of, because Malcolm talked about this community control. There's land right under the feet where you have communities that are predominantly Black. And again, going to these short-term solutions, this is what organizing and unifying, this is why organizing and unifying is important, because we can essentially control territories by getting organized and controlling institutions within those territories. In the long run, there will be this struggle, right, to separate from the colonial empire. And I think that's when Malcolm, he talks about the bloodshed that will take place. We can see that what happened with this country when the South attempted to separate from the Union. There was a civil war that lasted for 4 years. But I think there is things that we can do in regards to where we are and to be able to control the territories that we live in. There's Africa, there's land, plenty of land under the feet of African people. The problem is the neo-colonialists that Khalil was talking about earlier. And so we just have to, struggle with those neo-colonialists because there's plenty of land that is under our feet and is in our possession, but those resources aren't benefiting African people. It's 12:49. I just want to make you conscious of that too.
Right. Ikemba just mentioned we're gonna close a little earlier. He has to run, but I do want to say before I kick it over to Alida that what Brother Khalid said is really important, and it reminds me that we cannot, like, all oppression is linked, and we cannot separate our struggle for freedom from the environment with which we live. There are a number of groups that are doing the work, like Downtown Crenshaw, doing excellent work that are leading like land trusts and kind of take back the land effort in a revolutionary way. And we should really seek out these initiatives and join them, whether or not we are directly impacted. Also, what's happening in Flint and what was happening in Jackson, Mississippi with regards to the water crisis is still ongoing. There was a professor, who said, wherever there's Black folks, be wary about drinking the water, right? And so we need to really think about this very deeply and connect ourselves to this struggle and this work as well, and not just look at it from the kind of ownership perspective of land. And so more on that later, but I want to make sure we get Alida in so we can wrap soon.
Yeah, for the land. Thank you for everyone's stop was on point. I'm grateful that Khalid mentioned the Free the Land in another perspective, because for me, to say free the land is important. When we started Camp Humzico, Brother Malcolm's quote on revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of independence. Is to not to make it what it is now, a saying or a logo like power to the people, but literally, Baba Chokwe brought all of us, my children included. My children are 20 and 23, 21 and 23, every summer on land. So there's one thing that we have, the theory, and we get to get on Zooms and do programs and have political education and have theory, but there's no action in that. And so for me, I miss Baba Chokwe and Baba Hannibal because it wasn't just about talking about freeing the land or showing it through lectures and discussions, but showing that kids, our babies, together got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, including the cubs. The cubs are the babies that are under 4, up until the Panthers who were over 17. 6 o'clock, they had to run down to the water, jump into the lake. After jumping in the lake, they had to run into formation every morning and say the pledge that we had on Free the Land. So there's something about what has digressed in who we are. Not that I don't think there's a new life of what we are as freedom fighters about freeing the land, but we need to go back to the ways where it was longer, without nonprofit money, without much of the theory, but the action also. And so my children who have been now camp counselors, when my son was at the Cubs at 3 years old doing a tour in a hike, he with a stick telling the kids to be careful, 3 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they digress on land. And so, yes, we have to talk about having land because we got to show it. Too many times I hear people just quote books, in our movement and don't understand what it was like to put their hands in the dirt, that sweat. But we are on these computers, and it's not what Kazi Toure even taught me, which was when we used to do physical regimen every morning. And that meant around the lake for 2 miles. That meant push-ups, sit-ups. Some of us have to deal with that because of our health. And how are we showing freeing the land by only stating the statements, but not showing the next generation what it looks like? So I'm glad that Malcolm did bring this statement for us to Baba Chokwe and all those Hannibal Africa, Mama Zenobia, Ahmed Al-Bafimi, because that's where we learned to teach the youth how to shoot, how to stay up in the middle of the night, to do security, and all those groups, bow and arrow shooting and horseback riding. We are showing that, like you said, in community land trust, not only in California, but some of us going out to the, like we do, we go out to the maroon villages outside of the country and the Columbus outside of the country, but we're doing that, like purchasing land so us to go. So I just want to expand on what Khalid said, which is not just let's have our families go back to the Southern land or the land from our grandparents, but let's go to these lands and make sure they are used for the movement. Some people aren't using the land. So asking them, can we use your land for a summer program? Can we bring some youth to these lands that you have since it's in your family? I think to do that is freeing the land, not just taking the land for individualistic needs, which has happened to all of us because we have to own a job and take care of our families. But we need to be about that thing my grandma taught me, which she was never about just taking me and her grandkids to a camp in the summer. She took all the community kids. And I miss that type, just like I miss the fish fries in front of churches, because there's something about being amongst the people and us getting off these Zoom calls with so much rhetoric and so much dialect that sometimes, to me, is why people have forgotten or have a problem with us, because with mutual aid, they know how many churches don't have basements, but no more breakfast programs. They know how many nonprofits have spaces, but people can't come into them. So I think freeing the land is about the action, not just the slogans. And yes, on that, when we go into the woods, like we're doing for this month long, we can talk about combat liberalism. We're talking about what, these other political things are, including how do we become militia or even non-militia or healers or whatever component that is necessary to bring it to the next level. Well, we can't do that just being on Zoom calls. We got to be on land in the bush, because that is what our forefathers in every country of Africa has taught us. And yeah, community land trust is a white word that came from America. So yeah, utilizing that too. But having them to be called Quilembos, Palenques, Asusumas, Las Sociedades is something we should know. And we can't do that in just time. And I'm sorry you got a short time for this, but that's my point. As soon as we get deeper on something, we got to go, because we don't give ourselves more than a weekend to be together. And we got to do that. So I yield, and I apologize for taking up so much time.
No worries. So we will be back here on Thursday, where we're continuing to unpack Message to the Grassroots. And so the conversation can absolutely continue, both in the chat as well as next week, Thursday. Again, as Ikemba said at the start, there will be a Malcolm X symposium in Boston on the 11th of November to honor the 60 years to the day of Message to the Grassroots. So we welcome everyone to Boston to join us in that symposium. And we'll end here. Again, we'll have our last and final power hour for this year on Thursday at noon. Please come back and join us then. Thank you.